Here, talking about the economic situation in Trinidad and Tobago and the economic outlook as well for 2017. The government, they did have their retreat, and they said that this is the year when they're going to start implementing a variety of different plans to basically move the economy of Trinidad and Tobago forward. We still look to see, those getting started. They said the first year basically was to try to get the ministers to settle into their portfolios, and this year is when you're going to see some action. Some of that's been happening as the year started was, of course, the wage negotiations, which many people, I think, are a little bit, concerned about in a sense, and wondering exactly how is it really going to affect the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And to discuss that and more with us here on GMTT is Subhas Ramkhelawan, who is a financial investment specialist. So good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, and thank you for having me on the program.
Very well. Thank you so much for being here. And Happy New Year, because it's the first time I'm seeing you for the year as well.
Same to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We want to start off with the OWTU issue, the 5% wage negotiation that they managed to win, if you want to say. So now their wages have to be paid out 5% from the 28th of January. We're also looking to see how that affects the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, whether we can really afford it. And then we've got other unions as well who are in the negotiating phase, and clearly they're not going to be settling for 0.00 now that this 5% has been allotted to OWTU. So how do you think that this is going to have an effect on our economy?
Well, the positioning clearly of not only what's happening at Petrotrin, but what will happen in the public sector, the direct public sector, in terms of the agitation for wages and salaries beyond a 0.00 outlook, will in fact have an impact on expenses as far as the Treasury is concerned. Because some of these enterprises, state enterprises, as well as the public sector, state enterprises, some of them are loss-making entities, and therefore that will have to be coughed up out of the pockets of the Treasury. And then, of course, the public sector is a direct charge on the fiscal situation, government's fiscal situation. So the answer is that expenses, though likely to rise, may not be compensated by an increase in revenues. And this, of course, could have an impact in terms of the estimated fiscal deficit for the 2016-2017 year. So there is no easy answer, and the economy is going to continue to be challenged. In fact, expectations that GDP would have declined about 2% of forecasts in 2016, I believe it's going to be, the decline would be deeper, especially since we saw oil price touching $25 earlier in the year in February. It has come back up and come back up well, but that is a 2016 story ending at about $52 odd. Going forward, if the $52 odd holds, then it is a plus for the Trinidad and Tobago economy.
But how soon can we actually see the results of the benefits of that rise in oil prices? Because that's going to take a little while.
Well, even with the increase in the oil prices, let us presume that they stay at the mid-50, mid-60 area. That still in and of itself will not close the deficit. Let us put it this way, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is a gap that has presented itself because of a significant decline in revenue from the oil sector. And we would have seen it's down from 18 million to 11 million down to 11 million down to 2 billion. And that gap cannot be easily filled. So that $15 or $16 billion gap in this year's deficits will not be closed, and it cannot be closed by recurrent revenue.
All right. So that looks a little bit gloomy, actually.
Well, that is the story. I think at the end of the day, how do we work towards a solution? Part of it is that we are going to all have to bear as equitably as possible the burden of adjustment. And I use that word adjustment because in the last rotation, such as this in the 1980s into the 1990s, it was about structural adjustment. It comes back again to structural adjustment, diversifying the economy, moving away from the heavy dependence on energy, it is a sort of deja vu in a different form.
Well, I think that has been the call from a very long time, especially with the drop in oil prices, diversification of the economy. But do you see enough of that happening so that we can actually help boost the economy? And that too is going to take some time.
Well, let's look at it. If you think about diversification away from the energy sector, it's going to take a long time, and it's going to take, the impact on GDP in the initial stages will be small. Therefore, we have to manage our expenses while we try to enhance revenues. Diversification, which is going downstream in the energy sector, making best use of our limited gas and getting the highest value added. Some of that can be achieved in a much shorter period. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years or so, as opposed to diversification. Really, it is a 15, 20-year plan, because it's like bamboo shoots. It takes a long time to come out of the ground, and then you will see it. So those are the kinds of issues that we face. And we have to be sanguine to the fact that adjustment will have to come from all quarters. The job of the government is to try to find the most equitable balance of the adjustment. Our markets, for example, in terms of the local stock market, the outlook is not a rosy one. We are seeing declines in the all TNT index. We are seeing declines in the composite. We are seeing some of the cross-listed stock on the upside, but that is not sufficient to hold the market up. So we are going to see valuations go down, and it's very important for investors to be very selective, because there are stocks that will be useful and will add value. But the market as a whole, if you buy a basket of the market, it's going to go down.
You know, something I wanted to ask, and I think that's something that people are not really clear about. We have a floating dollar. And there's been talk about, well, rumors, I should say, not really talk about devaluing that dollar.
Yes.
Is that possible with a floating dollar?
Well, the word devaluation is inappropriate for a managed or floating currency, or managed float, as we like to say in Trinidad. What will happen is the market forces will cause a deterioration in the exchange. As we have seen, as supply becomes truncated and demand does not fall at the same level of the decline in supply, what are you going to get? You are going to get a higher price that is being paid for the US dollar. And that has happened from about $6.40 up to $6.75 or thereabouts now. That is happening. I cannot see that adjusting in the very short term, because our foreign exchange inflows are not sufficient to provide the level of supply to meet the demand. It's a demand-supply problem in the short term. Structurally, I would say that we are still very well off with 11 months cover in terms of foreign exchange. When you are in trouble, you are talking about 6 weeks cover and 2 months cover and so on. But it is not to be frittered away, because we have to ensure that foreign exchange flows start to build back up before we get to any kind of profligate spending or utilization of currency for purposes that are not deemed absolutely or necessary, I should say.
Well, you know, you talk about the foreign exchange, and I think that even in 2017, some would say the situation has gotten worse with respect to getting the US dollar.
Yes.
It's even more difficult now. Some banks are even making some other changes to how they actually sell that dollar, even if you have to send wire transfers. There's a limit to even wire transfers as well. If you need to do that, there is now going to be some limits on credit cards, international credit card use over a certain limit and all these things. So it's actually getting more difficult to access foreign exchange, especially with respect to the US dollar. I think even the Canadian dollar is
all hard currency is becoming difficult to access, because investors or purchasers of currency might buy the euro to get back into US payment. They might buy the Canadian dollar. Once there is the opportunity to be able to get a hard currency, one can switch in terms of the payment and convert that to some other hard currency. Yes, the situation is that the currency situation will continue to be difficult in 2017, and it's going to impact listed companies and so on as well, because they, particularly those who are in trading and manufacturing for the local sector where there's a high raw material import content. So those things will continue. I think in the sector, the one area in terms of listed companies that we have looked at is in energy, TTNGL, which sells all of its revenues come in US dollars, and the price of the product is going up, and the volume of the product available in production is likely to go up as well. So that's the one bright spot that I see, as well as some of the companies that are cross-listed that pay dividends in US dollars or record their income in US dollars, since they are not operating solely in Trinidad and Tobago. Bottom line, challenging times. And I have every confidence in the people of Trinidad and Tobago to make the adjustment as they did in the 1980s, 1990s. Let us not think only gloom and doom. We are a resilient people. When we have to adjust, we will do it. In other situations, it's rational to get as much as you can get. If you pay nothing to get something, that's a fantastic investment. When it's no longer available, I believe in the resilience of the Trinidadian and the Tobagonian.
When you say resilience, but what does that resilience take? What is it that Trinbagonians need to do in order? Because you need to have a flow of cash in and out and within the country as well to keep the economy, even if it's at a stable point. You need to have that spending, but then you need to be careful how you spend as well.
Well, first challenge is unemployment will likely rise. Second is that those who have a job and have an income will cut back on expenditure. Those who have will cut back on expenditure. Not we hope, because at some point in time you will be called in by the bank. You cannot live on borrowed money for an extended period of time. So you are going to get to a limit. Even the banking sector will stop lending to persons who are overextended. So all of the forces push towards the question of working towards more resilience. Some of the issues that we have is that the crime situation is not under control, and the challenge of personal security is one that is uppermost in the minds of people. That is something that great focus has to be placed on at a time when the economy is declining. There is a correlation, whether or not full or otherwise, there is some correlation between rising unemployment and the security situation.
All right. So hopefully we're banking on the Trinidad and Tobago citizen to basically be resilient, to basically know what you're doing, how you're spending your money, spend your money so that you get the best value for your money. You cannot stop, because that's going to stagnate the economy.
Yes.
We need to continue spending, but be diligent in your spending. So thank you very much, Subhas Ramkhelawan, speaking with us about the economic outlook for 2017. He's a financial investment specialist, and we thank you for being here on Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago.